You know, sometimes we can feel like we're standing a little bit in the background, like our part in the big story of life isn't as grand or as noticeable as others. It's so easy, isn't it, to look at the bright lights, the big stages, the people who seem to be at the very center of everything, and wonder if our own quiet contributions truly matter? We might find ourselves feeling a little bit overlooked, perhaps even unseen in the grand scheme of things. And in those moments, when that feeling starts to settle in, it can be such a profound comfort to remember that God's story, His vast and beautiful narrative, is absolutely filled with people just like us. People whose names might not always be shouted from the rooftops, but whose quiet influence shaped history in profound, often unexpected ways. Their lives whisper a beautiful, reassuring truth. Significance isn't always about being loud or in charge. It's often found in the gentle, steadfast presence that brings light and warmth to those around us, in the small, consistent acts of faithfulness that over time become monumental. Think about someone like Onesimus. When his name first appears in Scripture, he's not introduced as a hero or a leader. His story begins in a difficult, deeply challenging place. He was a runaway, a person who had made serious mistakes, and in that time, such a circumstance carried an incredibly heavy weight, both legally and socially. It's easy to picture him as someone likely filled with fear, perhaps alone and without much hope for a future that looked bright or promising. In many ways, he was a nobody in the eyes of the world, someone easily dismissed and forgotten, a name that wouldn't have registered on any public radar. Yet his path, through circumstances we don't know fully, crossed with Paul's, who was himself imprisoned, a man in a vulnerable and hidden place. In that shared confinement, in that quiet, unassuming space, something beautiful and transformative began to bloom. Paul, with his tender heart and his unwavering faith, didn't see a runaway slave. He saw a person, a brother, someone deeply loved by God, someone full of dignity and worth. He saw potential, a spirit waiting to be nurtured and brought back into the light. And in that simple, unassuming relationship, in that profound act of human connection, Onesimus found not just refuge from his past, but a completely new understanding of himself, of grace, and of his true purpose. He became useful, helpful, a true companion to Paul, a faithful and beloved brother, as Paul himself described him. Onesimus didn't lead an army or preach to thousands from a grand pulpit. His influence was quieter, more personal. He served Paul, learned from him, and became a living testament to transformation and redemption. His story, tucked away in a short letter, quietly shows us that even when we feel like we've stumbled or been pushed aside or made choices we deeply regret, our lives can still be reshaped and used in incredibly meaningful ways. It's a gentle reminder that God sees beyond our past, beyond our current circumstances, and right into the heart of who we are meant to be. He can take what seems broken or lost, what seems small or insignificant, and weave it into something incredibly meaningful and impactful, not just for ourselves, but for others too. It teaches us that sometimes our greatest impact comes not from a position of public power, but from a place of humble service, from simply being present and available, from offering a steady hand or a listening ear. Consider another quiet figure, someone you might barely remember from a quick read of the scriptures, a man named Jabez. His story is just a few verses long, a tiny flicker in the vast, overarching narrative. Yet those few verses hold such profound depth. His mother named him Jabez because, as the scripture tells us, she said, "I bore him in pain." Imagine carrying that name, a constant reminder of sorrow and difficulty, right from your very birth. It's easy to picture him growing up feeling overshadowed, perhaps even cursed or defined by his difficult beginning. He wasn't born into a lineage of great leaders or mighty warriors. He was simply a man burdened by a challenging name and a difficult start to life. He was in many ways just another person in a vast landscape of humanity, easily lost to the sands of time. Yet Jabez did something truly remarkable, something that set him apart. He didn't just accept his lot in life, didn't just resign himself to what seemed inevitable. He reached out to God, quietly, sincerely, with a prayer that was both simple and incredibly profound. He asked God to bless him, to enlarge his territory, to be with him, and to keep him from harm and pain, so that he would not cause pain. And the scripture tells us, in a beautifully understated way, that God granted his request.
What does that tell us about quiet influence? It tells us with such clarity that our conversations with God, those deep, heartfelt whispers we offer him in our own hidden spaces, have immense, world-changing power. Jabez didn't have a public platform. He wasn't addressing a multitude. He had a private plea, a deeply personal conversation with his Creator. And in that private plea, he didn't just change his own life, he changed the trajectory of his existence. His influence wasn't about leading crowds or making grand public pronouncements. It was about the power of personal faith, the quiet courage to ask for more than what was merely expected or given, and the unwavering belief that God listens to the cries of even the most overlooked hearts. His life reminds us that our personal growth, our quiet prayers, and our individual acts of faith are not small things in God's eyes. They're the seeds of quiet transformation, not just for ourselves, but often for those around us as well, even if we never fully see the magnificent ripple effects our prayers can create. Sometimes the most significant shifts begin with a quiet, heartfelt conversation with God. Our quiet influence often blossoms through our unwavering support for others, through being the steady, consistent presence that allows someone else to shine, to feel brave enough to step out. Think about a person in your own life who has believed in you, truly believed, even when you didn't quite believe in yourself. That gentle encouragement, that consistent faith in your potential, that quiet cheer from the sidelines, that is such a powerful form of quiet influence. They might not be the one in the spotlight, but they are the sturdy, reliable foundation that allows others to reach for their dreams, to find their voice, to grow into who they are meant to be. They are the quiet strength in the storm, the steady hand when you feel unsteady. Their impact is immeasurable, though often unacknowledged in the bustling noise of the world. The world, with its often loud and demanding voice, tends to praise the bold, the outspoken, the ones who command immediate attention and fill a room with their presence. And there's certainly a place and a need for that kind of leadership and visibility. But God's kingdom,
His way of working in the world often thrives on the quiet strength, the steadfast love, the unseen acts of kindness, the humble spirits who simply show up day after day and offer what they have with an open heart. It's in the quiet listening when someone needs to talk, the gentle nudge that helps a friend find their way, the consistent presence that offers comfort without needing words, the thoughtful prayer offered on behalf of another when they don't even know they're being prayed for. These are the precious, often invisible threads that weave together the beautiful, intricate tapestry of human connection and divine purpose. These are the quiet acts that hold the fabric of community and faith together. So if you find yourself feeling a bit like a hidden figure, like your contributions are small or your presence less than grand in the world's estimation, take a moment to breathe and remember. Remember Onesimus finding profound purpose in humble service, and Jabez finding unimaginable blessing through a quiet, sincere prayer. Remember that God doesn't measure significance by the world's often fleeting standards of fame or power. He looks at the heart, at the faithfulness, at the quiet love you offer, at the sincerity of your intentions. He sees the ripple effects of your kindness, the warmth of your presence, the quiet strength of your character, the deep sincerity of your prayers, even when others don't, even when you yourself might not perceive them. Your quiet influence is far, far more significant than you might ever imagine, a truly precious gift in God's ongoing story. It's such a reassuring thought, isn't it? To know deep in your heart that even in our quietest moments, even in our most unseen roles, we are deeply seen, deeply valued, and deeply used by a God who cherishes every single one of us, and who carefully places each of us precisely where we are meant to be for His grand and loving purposes. He's always at work, even in the quietest corners of our lives.
We just talked about the quiet ways our presence and prayers can make a difference, often unseen by the wider world. Now, let's gently shift our gaze a little to think about how God often chooses the most unexpected people for His biggest plans. It's so easy to believe that for something truly extraordinary to happen, you need to be extraordinary yourself, exceptionally talented, remarkably strong, or perhaps born into some kind of special lineage. We often associate great impact with great titles, with people who stand in the spotlight, who have all the answers and seemingly boundless energy. But if we look closely at God's story, we discover a beautiful, consistent pattern. He has a profound way of looking past the obvious candidates, beyond the dazzling lights and impressive resumes, and instead choosing very ordinary lives to accomplish truly extraordinary purposes. It's a comforting thought, isn't it? Knowing that our everyday lives, with all their normal rhythms and routines, are exactly the kind of material God loves to work with. He takes what we might consider plain and infuses it with His divine sparkle, creating something truly magnificent. Consider someone like Deborah. In her time, society was mostly patriarchal. Women didn't typically hold positions of public leadership.
especially not as judges and military leaders. Yet here she was, a woman living under a palm tree, serving as a judge for her people, listening to their disputes and offering wisdom. She wasn't a king, she wasn't a priest, she wasn't born into a noble military family. She was, in many ways, an ordinary woman, living an ordinary life, perhaps tending to her family and her home, with this extraordinary gift of discernment and a deep connection to God. When her people were oppressed, when the men around her seemed paralyzed by fear, it was Deborah, this seemingly ordinary woman, whom God called to stir them to action. She didn't lead the army herself into battle, though she was right there with them in spirit. She directed the commander, Barak, reminding him of God's promise of victory. She stood firm, unwavering in her faith, providing the courage and conviction that everyone else seemed to lack.
Deborah's story reminds us that God doesn't look for the loudest voice, but for a willing heart. He doesn't look for the most conventional leader, but for someone who will listen to his voice and act with courageous obedience. Her ordinariness is precisely what makes her story so powerful for us. It tells us that our gender, our background, our societal position, none of these limit God's ability to use us. He simply needs us to be available, to be tuned in to his guidance, and to be brave enough to step into the roles he calls us to, even if they feel entirely new or daunting. She lived a life beyond the expected spotlight of her culture, yet her light shined brightly, bringing hope and deliverance to an entire nation. Her influence didn't come from seeking fame, but from faithfully fulfilling the task God placed before her, in her quiet place under that palm tree. Then there's Barnabas, a name that means son of encouragement. We might not remember him as often as Paul or Peter, but his contribution was utterly indispensable. He wasn't one of the original 12 disciples. He wasn't known for writing powerful letters or delivering soaring sermons in the same way Paul was. His gift was simpler, yet profoundly impactful. Think about how crucial he was in the early days of the church. When Saul, who became Paul, had a radical conversion experience, everyone else was understandably suspicious. This was the man who had actively persecuted believers, who had held the cloaks of those who stoned Stephen. But Barnabas, with his encouraging heart, took a risk. He vouched for Paul. He brought him to the apostles. He helped pave the way for Paul to be accepted and to begin his incredible ministry. Without Barnabas's willingness to look past Paul's reputation and see God's hand at work, Paul's ministry might have been stifled before it even truly began.
Barnabas later mentored John Mark, who had famously deserted Paul and Barnabas on an earlier missionary journey, causing a significant rift between Paul and Barnabas. Paul was unwilling to give John Mark another chance, but Barnabas believed in him. He saw beyond John Mark's past failure and saw his potential for future usefulness. And because of Barnabas's faithful encouragement and patient discipleship, John Mark went on to become a vital figure in the early church, eventually writing one of the Gospels. Barnabas wasn't the one preaching to thousands, but he was the one pouring into the people who would. His role was to lift others up, to see the best in them, to encourage them back onto their feet when they stumbled. That's an extraordinary purpose, isn't it? To be the one who nurtures greatness in others, who helps them step into their own divine calling. It shows us that you don't have to be the star of the show to play a starring role in God's plan. Your ordinary ability to see good in others, to lend a helping hand, to offer a kind word, is profoundly powerful. This idea that God uses ordinary lives for extraordinary purposes is woven throughout his story. Think about a shepherd boy named David, chosen over his taller, stronger brothers. Think about humble fishermen, chosen to be apostles. These weren't people from the halls of power or the great academies. They were everyday people, tending sheep, mending nets, living their lives. Yet God saw something in their hearts, a willingness, a faith, a simple devotion, and he chose them. He chose them not because they were perfect, not because they had all the answers, but because they were available to him. Sometimes we might feel like our lives are too messy, too simple, or too unremarkable to be used by God for anything truly significant. We look at our routines, our jobs, our families, our daily tasks, and think, how can any of this contribute to something extraordinary? But it's precisely in these ordinary moments, in these everyday spaces, that God often does his deepest work. It's in the patient raising of children, instilling values of kindness and faith that will ripple through generations. It's in the diligent work of our hands, doing our jobs with integrity and excellence, bringing light into our workplaces. It's in the simple act of being a good neighbor, offering help, listening with empathy, building community, one small interaction at a time. These aren't flashy acts, but they are the bedrock of God's kingdom on earth.
God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. He takes our ordinary gifts, our regular circumstances, our everyday struggles, and infuses them with his power and purpose. The gentle touch of a caregiver, the patient explanation of a teacher, the consistent presence of a friend, the quiet offering of prayer for someone in need. These are all extraordinary purposes, flowing from ordinary lives lived with open hearts. They might never earn a headline or a grand award, but in God's eyes, they are invaluable. They are the quiet, steady forces that change lives, that build hope, that spread love. So let go of the idea that you need to be something more than you are right now to be used by God. Let go of the need for the spotlight. Embrace your ordinary life, your unique experiences, your personal gifts, no matter how small they seem. Just like Deborah, who faithfully judged under her palm tree, and Barnabas, who simply encouraged others to soar. Your life, in its very ordinariness, holds the potential for extraordinary impact when surrendered to God. He can take your quiet moments, your seemingly insignificant interactions, your regular tasks, and weave them into something beautiful and powerful, far beyond what you could ever imagine. Your willingness is his open door to do amazing things through you in ways that transcend the glamour and shine of any earthly spotlight. Your life matters deeply, just as it is, because God is in it. We've been thinking about how God uses quiet influences and ordinary lives, and how that's such a comfort, knowing we don't need to be in the spotlight to matter. Now, let's explore another beautiful facet of God's design: how we find our voice, our true impact, often not in the ways we initially expect, but in surprising and sometimes very personal forms. Sometimes our impact is a gentle whisper, a quiet presence that brings solace. Other times, it's a profound roar, a courageous stand that changes things. But what's so reassuring is that both the whisper and the roar, and everything in between, are deeply valued by God. He empowers us to find our unique way of expressing His love and truth in contexts we never anticipated. It's about recognizing that our voice isn't just about audible sound. It's about the unique way our lives, our actions, and our authentic selves communicate who God is to a world that desperately needs to hear. Think about Esther. Her story unfolds in the opulent yet dangerous setting of a foreign king's palace. She was a young Jewish woman, an orphan, who was unexpectedly chosen to be queen. Her life, for a time, was one of relative anonymity and quiet beauty within the palace walls. She wasn't seeking a platform. She was simply living the life she had been given. But then, a crisis emerged, a plot to annihilate her entire people. Suddenly, her quiet existence was shaken. Her cousin Mordecai challenged her, essentially saying, "Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" This wasn't about public speaking or leading a protest. It was about finding her voice in the most high-stakes, unexpected way possible. Esther's roar wasn't a shout from the city gates. It was a courageous decision, an act of profound vulnerability. She risked her life by approaching the king unbidden, something that could have meant immediate death. Before she even spoke a word, her voice was expressed through her actions, her decision to fast, to gather her people for prayer, to prepare herself with immense humility and courage. When she finally did speak, it was not with demands, but with careful, strategic invitations, and ultimately a brave revelation of her identity and the danger facing her people. Her voice, delivered in whispers within the king's private chambers, held the weight of her entire nation's fate. It was a roar of quiet defiance against injustice, a powerful advocacy born out of faith and deep love for her people. Her impact was not through a formal leadership position in the public square, but through her unique access and her willingness to use it at great personal cost. It reminds us that our greatest impact might come when we least expect it, when circumstances we never planned for call us to step up in ways we couldn't have imagined. Our voice can be found not just in what we say, but in our readiness to act, to risk, and to trust that God has placed us exactly where we are for a reason. Then there's the story of the woman with the alabaster jar, an unnamed figure in the Gospels, often overshadowed by the more famous disciples. She wasn't a preacher or a healer or a recognized leader in her community. In fact, in the eyes of many, she might have been seen as someone of low social standing, perhaps even a sinner. Yet she found her voice, her extraordinary impact, not through words or public deeds, but through an act of profound, lavish love and worship. She came to Jesus, broke open a costly jar of perfume, and poured it over his head. This was a scandalous act to some, a wasteful gesture to others. But Jesus saw it differently. He understood the depth of her heart, the purity of her devotion. He defended her, saying that what she had done was beautiful, and that wherever the gospel is preached in the whole world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Her whisper was an act of worship, a silent declaration of love and adoration that spoke volumes. She didn't have to preach a sermon. Her actions became a sermon. She didn't have to argue theology. Her devotion communicated profound truth. Her impact continues to resonate through the ages, not because of what she said, but because of what she did, how she loved, how she gave. It reminds us that our voice, our impact, isn't limited to verbal expression. It can be found in acts of generosity, in moments of quiet compassion, in gestures of extravagant love, in pouring ourselves for others. Sometimes the most powerful messages are conveyed without a single spoken word, communicated through the language of the heart and the authenticity of our lives. These stories show us that finding our voice isn't always about being traditionally eloquent or having a public platform. It's about recognizing the unique spheres of influence God has placed us in, and then faithfully, courageously, and lovingly using what we have, where we are. Your voice might be a whisper of encouragement to a discouraged friend, an email of support to someone struggling, a kind word to a stranger, or a consistent prayer offered for those you love. That whisper carries immense weight in the heart of the one who receives it, echoing with comfort and reassurance. Or perhaps your voice might be a quiet roar, a gentle yet firm stand for justice in your workplace, a courageous conversation with a family member, advocating for someone overlooked, or choosing to live by your values even when it's unpopular. These aren't always grand public declarations. Sometimes the most potent roar is a consistent, principled stand in your everyday life, a refusal to compromise on what you know is right, a steadfast commitment to truth and goodness. It's the integrity you demonstrate when no one is watching, the compassion you extend when it's inconvenient, the quiet strength you embody when facing difficulty. God often calls us to use our voice in ways that feel entirely outside our comfort zone, in situations that demand a courage we didn't know we possessed. It might be speaking up for someone who can't speak for themselves, sharing a difficult truth with a loved one, or simply sharing your own story of faith and struggle in a vulnerable moment. These acts, whether a soft-spoken word or a resolute action, carry the power to shift perspectives, to bring healing, and to ignite change. So don't limit your understanding of voice to only what is spoken or publicly declared. Embrace the full spectrum of ways God empowers you to make an impact. Your impact can be found in your quiet strength, your gentle empathy, your unwavering integrity, your courageous vulnerability, your acts of selfless service, and your steadfast love. God has given each of us a unique voice, a unique way to reflect His character to the world. And whether it's expressed as a gentle whisper that soothes a troubled soul, or a profound roar that challenges injustice, or something wondrously in between, know that your voice, your unique contribution, is deeply valued and powerfully used by Him. You are called to speak, to act, to live in ways that bring His light into the world in all the unexpected and beautiful forms your voice may take.
We've explored how our quiet influences shape things, and how our voices, in whispers or roars, find impact in unexpected ways. Now, let's gently turn our attention to the paths we walk, particularly those journeys of faith that might not be celebrated with grand monuments or remembered in widespread tales. We often hear about the dramatic conversions, the triumphant victories, the saints whose lives seem perfectly aligned from beginning to end. And while those stories are inspiring, sometimes they can make us feel a little inadequate if our own journey feels more circuitous, more filled with stops and starts, with seasons of doubt and difficult detours. But the truth is, God's story is just as much, if not more, about the messy, winding, often challenging paths of ordinary people who, through resilience and redemption, found their way back to Him or found Him anew in unexpected places. These are the journeys that show us grace is real, that starting over is always possible, and that our struggles can become the very soil in which our deepest faith takes root and grows. Think about a character like Rahab. Her story isn't one of traditional piety or a life lived in a temple. She was a woman from Jericho, living in a city that was actively hostile to God's people. Her profession, frankly, was one that society often judged harshly. She was an outsider, a person on the fringes, not someone you would typically expect to play a pivotal role in God's unfolding plan for His people. Yet when the spies from Israel came to Jericho seeking information, Rahab, a woman of her circumstances, demonstrated an astonishing act of faith and courage. She chose to believe in the God of Israel, even though He was not her people's God. She hid the spies, lied to protect them, and made a covenant that would save her family when her city fell. Rahab's journey of faith wasn't a straight, pristine line. It started in a place of brokenness and worldly compromise, yet it moved toward profound belief and action. Her story is one of incredible resilience, not just surviving, but actively choosing a new path, making a bold decision that went against everything she had known. And it's a powerful story of redemption. God didn't dismiss her because of her past or her background. Instead, He honored her faith. She and her family were saved, and not only that, she was woven into the very fabric of God's people, eventually becoming an ancestor of King David, and remarkably, even of Jesus Himself. Her path was decidedly lesser known in terms of what society might have celebrated, but in God's eyes, it was a pivotal, courageous act of faith and a testament to His redemptive power. It tells us that no matter where we've come from, no matter the mistakes we've made, God sees our hearts turning towards Him, and He welcomes us into His story with open arms, offering us a chance at a new beginning, a new purpose. Consider another journey, one that speaks volumes about starting over and finding grace after deep disappointment. Peter. We know Peter well, the eager, impulsive disciple, often speaking before thinking, full of big promises and even bigger failures. His path wasn't lesser known in the sense that he was obscure, but his journey was certainly marked by unexpected twists, by a profound fall from grace that must have felt like the end of everything. He walked closely with Jesus, witnessed miracles, heard teachings firsthand, and even declared his unwavering loyalty. Yet, in Jesus' darkest hour, Peter denied him not once, but 3 times, just as Jesus had predicted. Imagine the weight of that failure, the crushing guilt and shame, the feeling of having betrayed the one you loved most, especially after such bold declarations of faithfulness. For a time, Peter's journey seemed derailed, his potential shattered. He retreated, seemingly returning to his old life of fishing.
But that's where the profound grace of redemption steps in. Jesus, after his resurrection, sought Peter out, not to condemn him, not to remind him of his failure, but to restore him. 3 times, Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me?" And each time, after Peter's heartfelt affirmation, Jesus gave him a new instruction, a renewed purpose: feed my sheep. This encounter, this gentle restoration, showed Peter that his journey wasn't over. His past didn't define his future. He was resilient. He had endured the deep pain of his failure and the shame, but he also allowed himself to be found and rebuilt by Jesus. His path was one of powerful redemption, moving from a moment of profound betrayal to becoming the rock upon which the early church would begin to build. Peter's story reminds us that our faith journeys are rarely perfect. They are often marked by stumbles, by moments when we fall short, by seasons where we feel lost. But God's grace is always there, waiting to pick us up, to mend what's broken, to redirect our steps, and to renew our purpose, transforming our failures into lessons and our pain into wisdom. These journeys, whether from the margins of society or from the depths of personal failure, highlight a crucial truth. God isn't looking for flawless people. He's looking for people with humble hearts who are willing to keep moving forward, even when the path is unclear or fraught with difficulty. Resilience isn't about never stumbling. It's about the courage to get back up, to keep leaning into faith even when it's hard. Redemption isn't about pretending our past never happened. It's about allowing God to transform our past, to use it for His glory, to write a new chapter that is beautiful and purposeful. Perhaps your own journey of faith feels like a lesser-known path right now. Maybe you're walking through a season of doubt, questioning things you once held dear. Perhaps you've made choices you deeply regret and feel unsure if you can truly be used by God again. Or maybe your faith simply doesn't look like what you see in others, feeling less dramatic or less outwardly expressive. It's okay. God sees you on your unique path. He understands the twists and turns, the moments of struggle, the quiet battles you're fighting. He knows the times you've had to dig deep for resilience, for the strength to keep putting one foot in front of the other. He is the God of new beginnings, the God who specializes in redemption, taking what seems broken and making it whole, taking what seems lost and finding profound purpose within it. Your journey, with all its imperfections, with all its detours, with all its moments of striving and surrender, is deeply significant to Him. He is not surprised by your humanity. He embraces it. He's not deterred by your past. He's eager to write your future. What does it mean to walk this path with resilience? It means trusting that even when you don't understand, even when things feel unfair or painful, God is still with you, working things for your good in ways you can't yet see. It means leaning on His strength when your own fails. It means allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to admit when you're struggling, and to accept the grace that is freely offered. And what does it mean to embrace redemption? It means letting go of the shame, allowing forgiveness to wash over you, and believing that your story, with all its complexities, is still a story God wants to use for His glory and for the good of others. He wants to allow your past struggles to become a wellspring of empathy and understanding for those who are walking similar, difficult roads. So if you feel your faith journey has been a bit unconventional, or if you faced setbacks that seem insurmountable, remember Rahab's courageous turn and Peter's profound restoration.
Let their stories gently remind you that God's love is boundless, His forgiveness is complete, and His ability to redeem and restore is limitless. Your life, with all its unique chapters, with all its moments of resilience and redemption, is a testament to His enduring grace. Your path might be lesser known to others, but it is intimately known and deeply cherished by God, and He is weaving it into something beautiful, purposeful, and profoundly extraordinary. He is walking every step with you, always.
We've talked about the quiet strength of individuals, their unexpected voices, and the resilience found in their unique journeys. Now, I want us to gently consider how all these individual lives, with their different colors and textures, are not just separate stories, but are being woven together into something infinitely larger and more beautiful than any one of us could create alone. Imagine a magnificent tapestry, vast and intricate, depicting a story of love, redemption, and purpose. Each of us is a single thread in that tapestry, some bright and bold, some soft and subtle, some appearing at the forefront, others quietly holding the fabric together from the back. It's easy, isn't it, sometimes to feel like a frayed edge, or a color that doesn't quite match, or perhaps even a thread that seems insignificant in the grand scheme. But the beautiful truth is, in God's grand design, every single thread has immense value. Not a single one is superfluous, not one is accidental, and not one is unnoticed by the master weaver. Every single one contributes to the strength, beauty, and completeness of the whole. Think about the sheer diversity of roles needed to build something truly meaningful, even in our everyday lives. A beautiful garden needs the strong, deep roots, the sturdy stems, the vibrant flowers, and the humble leaves that gather sunlight. A family thrives because of the parent who works tirelessly, the child who brings joy and new perspectives, the grandparent who offers wisdom, and the sibling who provides companionship. No single part is the most important. They are all essential to the flourishing of the whole. In the same way, God's kingdom is built not by a few superstars, but by the faithful contributions of countless individuals, each playing their unique, invaluable part.
Consider the lesser-known figures who contributed to major biblical events. People whose names we might easily overlook. We hear about Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt. But what about the nameless midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, who risked their lives by refusing Pharaoh's order to kill Hebrew baby boys? They were not leaders of nations. They were just two women doing their work, yet their quiet act of defiance and faithfulness literally saved generations. Their thread, seemingly small and almost invisible in the early parts of the story, was absolutely vital to the future of an entire people. Without their courage, the tapestry might have unraveled before it even began. Their value wasn't in their prominence, but in their integrity and their obedience to a higher call, even when it put them in danger. Their actions were a testament to the belief that every life is precious, every act of compassion ripples outwards, and every thread, no matter how fine, can bear immense weight. Or think about the anonymous crowds who followed Jesus. We remember the disciples, but what about the thousands who gathered to hear him teach, the ones who brought their sick,
the ones who simply showed up day after day. They weren't recorded by name, yet their presence was essential. They created the context for Jesus' ministry. They were the hungry hearts he fed, the seeking souls he touched. Each person in that crowd, with their individual needs and quiet faith, was a thread in the living tapestry of God's interaction with humanity. Their collective presence, their willingness to listen and receive, allowed the divine story to unfold. Their individual decision to show up, to listen, to believe, created the very environment in which extraordinary things could happen. They might have gone home to their ordinary lives, perhaps feeling like just one face in a sea of many, but their collective openness was profoundly significant.
Sometimes we feel that our gifts aren't grand enough, or our roles aren't visible enough. We might think, I'm not a public speaker, I'm not a great leader, I don't have a huge platform. But the tapestry doesn't just need the bold, eye-catching patterns. It also needs the steady background colors that provide balance and depth. It needs the careful stitching that holds everything together. Your contribution might be the gentle way you listen to a friend, providing a safe space for them to share their heart. It might be the consistent, faithful work you do in your home, creating an atmosphere of love and stability that shapes future generations. It might be the quiet, behind-the-scenes service you offer in your community or church, ensuring that everything runs smoothly, often without public recognition. These are the threads that provide strength, warmth, and integrity to the entire design. The beauty of God's design is in this interdependence. No thread can claim to be the whole tapestry, and yet without each thread, the tapestry would be incomplete, less vibrant, less whole. We are called to function together, each honoring the unique contribution of the other, understanding that our differences are not weaknesses, but strengths that enrich the collective story. This perspective can bring such deep peace, especially when we are in seasons where our own contributions feel small or unnoticed. It reminds us that our worth isn't determined by our visibility or by the world's applause, but by our place in God's intentional, loving design. He knows exactly why He created you, with your specific talents, your unique personality, your particular experiences. He knows the exact color and texture of your thread and where it needs to be placed to enhance the overall beauty of His masterpiece. So, how do we live with this understanding? It means releasing the pressure to be someone we're not, or to achieve a level of prominence that isn't meant for us. It means embracing our own unique contribution, however quiet or humble it may seem, and doing it with all our heart, knowing that it matters deeply. It means looking around and appreciating the diverse threads of others, recognizing their unique value, even if their contribution looks entirely different from our own. It means celebrating the quiet strength of the background worker, the steadfastness of the prayer warrior, the gentle wisdom of the counselor, the joyful spirit of the artist, the meticulous care of the organizer, the daring courage of the innovator.
Every act of kindness, every prayer whispered, every honest day's work, every moment of genuine connection, every step of faith taken, these are all threads. They are being woven into a story that is far greater than any one individual's narrative. The tapestry of God's kingdom is unfolding, rich with the stories of unseen heroes and quiet acts of faith. Your life, right now, in all its uniqueness, is a precious and indispensable thread in that magnificent design. You are not just existing, you are contributing to a divine masterpiece. Your very presence, your unique color and texture makes the whole more beautiful, more complete, and more radiant. Recognize your value, embrace your place, and trust in the Master Weaver's perfect design. You are absolutely essential. We've journeyed through the quiet influences, the ordinary lives used for extraordinary purposes, the unexpected ways our voices find impact, and the resilience found in lesser-known paths, ultimately seeing how every single thread is vital in God's grand tapestry. Now, as we come to this final reflection, I want us to bring all these comforting thoughts home directly to your heart, to your life. Because while it's beautiful and inspiring to consider others, the Onesimuses, the Deborahs, the Rahabs, the Barnabases, it's equally, if not more profound, to realize that your story, too, is being woven into God's incredible narrative. You're not merely an observer of these ancient tales. You are a living, breathing participant in the ongoing story of faith. This final thought is an invitation to embrace your unique and cherished place among God's unsung heroes. It's about understanding that the very qualities we've explored in these hidden figures, their quiet faithfulness, their humble obedience, their courageous acts, their resilient spirit, their unique voices, are also present and at work within you.
Sometimes, when we hear stories of great faith, whether from scripture or from history, we can create a separation in our minds. We might think, oh, those were special people from a different time with a different calling. My life is just my life. It's too ordinary, too imperfect, too quiet to be part of something grand. We tend to hold up these biblical figures or even modern-day spiritual giants as benchmarks we can't possibly reach. We might feel like our efforts are too small, our faith too wavering, our struggles too personal and unspectacular to be considered part of God's extraordinary purposes. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The essence of God's method has always been to work through the unexpected, the overlooked, the humble, and the willing. He is not looking for perfection. He is looking for presence. He is not looking for fame. He is looking for faithfulness. And in that beautiful, comforting truth, your story finds its profound and undeniable place. Think about what it truly means to be an unsung hero. It's someone whose impact is real, whose contribution is vital, but whose efforts often go without grand applause or widespread recognition. They are the quiet pillars, the steady presences, the gentle forces of goodness that hold communities together, that nurture growth, that bring comfort and light to individual lives. And if we're honest with ourselves, isn't that what many of us are striving to be in our own corners of the world? Aren't we all, in our own ways, trying to live lives that matter, lives that make a positive difference, even if that difference is only seen by a few, or even if it's only known in the quiet chambers of our own heart and in God's all-seeing eyes? Your heroism might not be about leading a nation, but about patiently raising a child with love and wisdom, shaping a soul for eternity. Is there anything more heroic than that? Your impact might not be about preaching to thousands, but about consistently showing up for a friend in need
year after year, offering a steady hand and a listening ear? Is there anything more profound than that kind of unwavering loyalty and care? Your courage might not be about facing down an army, but about choosing forgiveness when it feels impossible, or extending grace to someone who has hurt you deeply. Is there any greater strength than that? Your resilience might not be about surviving a grand, epic journey, but about enduring the quiet, daily struggles of life with hope and perseverance, continuing to trust even when your heart aches. Is there any more relatable heroism than that?
These are the quiet, profound acts that truly build the kingdom of God, that truly change the world, one heart, one family, one community at a time. And these are the acts that often go unsung, uncelebrated by the world's standards, but are deeply cherished and meticulously woven into God's grand narrative. Let's revisit some of the feelings we started with. The sense of being overlooked, of our contributions feeling small. Perhaps you're a caregiver, spending your days and nights tending to the needs of another. A job that is physically and emotionally demanding, often isolating, and rarely recognized outside your immediate circle. You might feel invisible, exhausted, and wonder if your sacrifices truly matter. But in God's eyes, your unwavering love, your patient presence, your selfless devotion are profoundly heroic. You are a living testament to divine love, caring for His precious children. That is not small. That is monumental. Your hands, worn from service, are doing sacred work. Your heart, weary from empathy, is reflecting the very heart of God. Or perhaps you're in a workplace that feels mundane, where your efforts seem to get lost in the shuffle, where recognition is rare, and the overall impact of your daily tasks feels abstract. You might feel like just another cog in a large machine. But when you approach your work with integrity, with diligence, with a quiet commitment to excellence, you are bringing God's light into that space. You are demonstrating faithfulness in your calling, whatever it may be. You are showing up day after day and contributing to the stability and functionality of a system, making life better, even in small ways, for those around you. That quiet, consistent faithfulness, when done unto God, is a powerful act of worship, a living testament to His presence in every area of life. It's a profound act of heroism to uphold truth and goodness in places where it might be forgotten. Maybe your journey has been particularly difficult, filled with illness, loss, or deep personal struggle. You might feel like you're simply trying to survive, with no energy left for grand gestures. But your very act of enduring, of continuing to put one foot in front of the other, of holding on to hope, even when it feels like a flicker, is an act of incredible resilience. Your ability to find even a sliver of gratitude amidst hardship, to extend kindness even when you're hurting, to share your vulnerability with others, and in doing so create space for their healing, these are profoundly heroic. Your quiet strength in adversity, your gentle perseverance through pain, speaks volumes to a world that often only celebrates outward triumph. You're demonstrating the profound strength of the human spirit, buoyed by divine grace, and in doing so, you are a beacon of hope to those who watch your journey. God's story is still being written, and your life is a vital, unfolding chapter within it. You don't need to strive for public recognition to know that your life has profound meaning and impact. Your worth is inherent, given by your Creator, not earned by your achievements or public acclaim. The lessons we learn from the hidden figures are not just historical anecdotes, they are mirrors reflecting back the potential and purpose within each of us. You have a quiet influence, just like Onesimus. You have the capacity for courage and conviction, like Deborah. You have a unique voice, whether a whisper or a roar, like Esther or the woman with the alabaster jar. And you are walking a journey of faith with opportunities for resilience and redemption, just like Rahab and Peter. Embracing your place among God's unsung heroes means living with a different set of values than the world often promotes. It means valuing faithfulness over fame, humility over self-promotion, quiet service over grandstanding, and genuine connection over superficial accolades. It means finding profound joy and satisfaction in the everyday moments, in the small acts of love, in the consistent application of your gifts, knowing that God sees it all, cherishes it all, and weaves it all into something eternally beautiful. It's about cultivating an awareness of God's presence in your ordinary day. When you're making a meal for your family, when you're helping a coworker, when you're offering a prayer, when you're simply being kind to a stranger, recognize that these are moments where God's love is flowing through you. You are an agent of His grace, a vessel of His light. These are not just mundane tasks, they are opportunities for profound spiritual impact, for quiet acts of heroism that build His kingdom.
So take a deep breath and let this truth settle into your heart. Your story, with all its unique contours and challenges, is a cherished part of God's unfolding masterpiece. You are not just a spectator, you are a vital participant. You don't need to be someone else or do something grander to be used by God. He delights in using you just as you are, in your unique circumstances, with your specific gifts, right here, right now. Embrace your place among God's unsung heroes. Live your life with intentionality, with kindness, with integrity, and with a quiet, confident faith, knowing that every breath you take, every act of love you offer, every choice you make to honor God is a profound contribution to His grand design. Your life is seen, it is valued, it is loved, and it is profoundly significant. You are an unsung hero, beloved by God, and your story is a testament to His enduring grace.